What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It is our weekly power rankings. It is time for our week 10 or 11 NHL Power Rankings for the 2021 NHL season. We'll be taking a look at that in this video. If you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey and want to help us hit 1,000 subscribers, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. And let's take a look at my week 11 power rankings. So let's get right into our rankings. So staying at the bottom once again as they continue their losing streak despite firing their head coach, despite a couple changes in the lineup, the Buffalo Sabres are now have lost. They're 0-9-1 in their past 10 games and on a 13-game losing streak. The Buffalo Sabres are officially the worst team in the league, and it's not even close. You watch this team play, they have no sense of even being there. And I said it a couple weeks ago, and you could see it. The word lethargic is the Buffalo Sabres. They have nothing in the tank. It's very disappointing, and I expect a lot of changes this summer because it's gotten to the point where it's not even, I don't even know what to say. They're going to have to blow up the entire team. I honestly, the only guys I expect to see in Buffalo next season that are on this roster right now are guys like Rasmus Asplund, Dylan Cousins, and Rasmus Dahlin. And that's it. Maybe Jeff Skinner because of that contract. Everybody else, yes, including Jack Eichel, I would not be surprised if they were playing on another team in the fall this year. This has been abysmal. And the Buffalo Sabres fans, I don't even know what to say. It's been really tough watching the Sabres. I'd say they're probably my fourth favorite team. And watching just the dismay and the falling apart of this organization. And the thing is, it's not even going to get better right away. You look at the draft this year. I mean, let's be honest. It's a nice draft, but you know, the real big player everybody's looking at, Shane Wright, is in the 2022 NHL draft. Owen Power, he's going to be a good player in the NHL, a good defenseman. And maybe Buffalo looks to add that this summer, but he is not that cornerstone franchise piece that they could pick up to save the franchise this summer. So the Buffalo Sabres, man, I don't know. I don't know what to say, but it has been a brutal, brutal season for the Sabres. At number 30, on a little bit of a lighter note, and I'll be talking about them this weekend, the Anaheim Ducks are at number 30 in our rankings. Now, the Anaheim Ducks get a couple of big victories. They're actually playing a lot better recently. The Buffalo Sabres situation is a lot worse than the Ducks, so I guess the Ducks can take small victories where they can. Now, the Anaheim Ducks, let's take a look at the standings. The Anaheim Ducks are third worst in the league. They're 3-6-1. So they're not doing that well. They're a -35 this season. So they obviously have their struggles. But like I said, the Ducks, they're just finding ways to just get out there and play. And now that they've got some young guys like Jamie Drysdale, Trevor Zegras putting up their first NHL goals last night, the Ducks are on the path to success down the road. And I'm excited to see what the Ducks bring to the table. I think they have a lot of talent, a lot of things that are going for them. It's just not going to go for them right away. So as this team continues to mature, get older, in the right places, guys like Isaac Lundestrom continuing to develop, Zegras, Drysdale, this is a good sign for the Anaheim Ducks. So that means going up to number 29 in our power rankings, the bottom three stays exactly the same. And number 29 is the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars have struggled mightily, 3-4-3 in their past 10 games. They're currently on a 2-game losing streak, and they find themselves continuing to fall down the standings. They've played the least amount of games throughout the entire league, but that doesn't seem to matter. Their point percentage is not that great either. They are a team that is on the outside looking in, and with their last night to Detroit, there are some genuine concerns about the Dallas Stars. Talk about another team like the Buffalo Sabres. Lethargic is what comes up for the Dallas Stars as well. A very difficult start, obviously, with the bug situation they had going into the season, as well as their, the snow that they had. They missed a couple games because of that. Just not a great situation for the Stars. A lot of games they have to make up here down the stretch. I just don't know if they're going to have enough in the tank, even with guys like like Tyler Seguin and Ben Bishop coming back, I think it's going to be too little too late this season for Dallas. Moving on up to number 28, staying at number 28 is the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators have the second least amount of points behind the Sabres in the NHL standings. They're 10-20-3 on the season, and they are 3-5-2 over the past 10 games, lost 2 straight. It's been another rough year for the Senators. The really alarming thing here is their road record. They are 4-14 on the road. Not good stats on the road. It's been really difficult for the Senators. I don't know how they're going to fix this. They got not as bad as the Buffalo Sabres. There's some hope, at least for the Ottawa Senators. But it's the redevelopment. It's the rebuild. That's what we're seeing in Ottawa. Another rough year for the Senators. Moving on up to number 27 is the San Jose Sharks. The San Jose Sharks stay at number 27. The bottom 5 stayed exactly the same. The San Jose Sharks have had their own plethora of issues. They're at 4-5-1 over their past 10 games, lost 2 straight as well. Just not a great week for the Dallas Stars. The San Jose Sharks, and this is a team that's actually played pretty well on the road. 8-2. They play, that's still sub 500, but they were playing a lot better in the beginning of the season. And since they've come back home, they're 9 games at home. They've only won 3 of their 9 games at home this season. So stuff like that has been the difference for the San Jose Sharks. I think they're on the outside looking in terms of playoffs. We may see them become sellers at this year's deadline. As we're getting closer and closer to the deadline, those neutral teams are starting to decide whether they're going to be buyers or sellers this year. And it looks like San Jose is becoming a seller. Moving on up to number 26, and we're heading to the metro area. It is the New Jersey Devils. Now, the New Jersey Devils have not been playing that well for themselves. 3-5-2 over the past 10 games, but they are on a 2-game winning streak. So there is some promise out of New Jersey. The only problem is, again, too little too late for the Devils. I think it's going to be really difficult, especially in that East Division with teams like Pittsburgh and Philly ahead of them, even Boston. It's going to be hard to beat them out for those last 2 spots in the Eastern Division. So, Devils, obviously some positives to take a look at, but it's been a long season for the Devils, and it's probably going to be a pretty brutal, trade deadline for them as well. They got to probably move out Gusev, Palmieri. Not fun times right now in New Jersey. Moving on up to number 25, staying in the metro area. No, we're not talking about the Islanders. We're taking a look at the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers are on a 3-game losing streak. Not a great week for the Rangers, but they are above at 500 for their past 10 games. 5-4-1 over their past 10. It's been a pretty up and down season for the Rangers. At home they've been a little bit worse than they have been on the road. 6-6-3 at home. They have 12 wins on the season. They find themselves right in the middle of the pack of the NHL. But again, the Rangers are a young team. They've had some goal-scoring issues since Artemi Panarin left. Besides that game against Philly, let's be honest. So the New York Rangers, as long as they can get Georgiev going and Kincaid maybe going, there is some hope for the Rangers. It's really a battle for those two for the backup while Shesterkin is injured. But we'll see what happens with the Rangers. Moving on up to number 24, this team has really been making some strides over the past couple weeks. And I gotta say, I like what I'm seeing in Motown, in Hockeytown. It's the Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings record 5-4-1 over their past 10. They are on a 2-game winning streak. They beat the Dallas Stars last night in a pretty good game. They played well overall. Jonathan Bernier and Thomas Greiss have been picking up some victories over the past couple weeks, so good things for the Detroit Red Wings in between the pipes. If they let go of Jonathan Bernier at the trade deadline this year as a backup, maybe somewhere to a playoff contender, they can feel reliable in Thomas Greiss because he has done quite well. He had a little bit of a rough patch over the past 20 games, but he's actually picked things up a little bit. He played really well through the first 10. The last 10 games, but he's starting to pick it up again, so hopefully good news there for Detroit. Now, moving on up to number 23 is the Nashville Predators. Now, Nashville Predators have had some issues, but they've picked up some wins toward the end of this week. They're 4-5-1 over their past 10 games, but they are on a 2-game winning streak. The Nashville Predators are another team, kind of like the New York Rangers, but the problem is the division is not. We're starting to see that gap because now you've got Columbus kind of starting to get back to Chicago's level, but still, they're 4 points back of Chicago, or they're 4 points back of Columbus, and 6 points back of Chicago, which is the last wild card spot, or the last playoff spot in the Central Division. I think it's going to be a lot of ground for Nashville to make up, especially without Roman Josi. Juuse Saros has come back into the lineup, played very well against Florida last night. That was a big victory for the Predators. Yikes, my eyes are itchy. But like I said, Juuse Saros played very well last night. I think he had 40 saves, so a good effort there for the Nashville Predators, and a good team against the Florida Panthers. But they got to find a way to keep things going if they want even a chance at the playoffs this year. But like I said, all the rumors we've been hearing around the trade deadline have been Nashville Predators forwards. Guys like Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm, Victor Arvidsson, all potentially leaving the Predators. Moving on up to number 22, we're heading to the North Division as we are taking a look at the Calgary Flames. Now, the Calgary Flames have been okay. They're 5-4-1 over their past 10 games. Daryl Sutter has definitely added a little bit of a spark to the Flames. They have lost their last game, which is definitely, not the best news for the Flames, but they're just finding ways to try and stay in the chase in that North Division, which has seemingly opened wide up for that last playoff spot, especially with the, we're kind of seeing we got the three top teams, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and the Toronto Maple Leafs at the top, and then everybody else is kind of in their own category. Montreal, Calgary, and there's another team I'm forgetting to mention. Montreal, Calgary, and maybe even Vancouver. That's the other team. And then Ottawa, we know where Ottawa is. So, I think there is still a case to be made that Calgary can make the playoffs. And we saw the emergence of Brett Ritchie this past week for the Flames. So maybe they decide not to pick up another top six forward. I think that would be a little bit of a mistake. But again, with the price tags being thrown around, Brett Ritchie, who they picked up off waivers, he's getting into fights. He's helping the Monahan line quite significantly. So maybe they just decide to go with that as their acquisition for the trade deadline. Moving on up to number 21, and we are heading out to Columbus, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And the Blue Jackets have had some issues. They've been a polarizing team over the past couple weeks. They're either doing really well right after the Laine trade, or they're really not doing well at all. And John Tortorella's benching Patrick Laine for no good reason. It seems like it's one or the other in Columbus. The Blue Jackets over this past week, 4-4-2 over their last 10 games. Like I said, they find themselves 2 points back of the Blackhawks for that Central Division, that fourth spot in the Central to make the postseason. Ideally, they get in the postseason this year, but I don't think there's any rush for Columbus. They realize that they may be letting go of their head coach, John Tortorella, this summer, and if they miss the postseason, that may be just enough for them to decide to part ways with Tortorella this summer. A big deadline here for the Blue Jackets, as well as the rest of the regular season, especially for the career of John Tortorella. Now, moving out to the West, as we already looked at the San Jose Sharks, but we are taking a look at the Los Angeles Kings. The Los Angeles Kings at number 20 in our rankings. Now, the Los Angeles Kings are actually doing quite well for the last couple weeks, but now, over the last 10 games, is a little bit of concern again back in LA. They're 3-4-3 over their past 10. They lost their last game. The LA Kings are starting to slide once again back to the mediocrity that they were really over the past 2 years. Really a tough situation for the Kings. The goaltending's kind of dropped off just a little bit, and that's just what's been happening. And this is, again, a situation where the LA Kings know they're in a rebuild, they're retooling, they got a lot of young guys. This is going to happen. But we saw the quick emergence of guys like Dustin Brown, Andrei Kopitar, Jeff Carter. We're starting to see those guys once again regress back to where they've been. Now, a team that's really been struggling over the past couple weeks, the Arizona Coyotes are at number 19. They've lost 5 straight. They lost to the Anaheim Ducks last night after blowing a 2-0 lead. This has been an interesting season for the Coyotes. And now, all of a sudden, we're starting to hear rumors about the Arizona Coyotes potentially becoming fire sailors at this year's deadline. Potentially Clayton Keller, Christian Dvorak, the goaltenders, Granta and Kemper. This could be a very interesting deadline. A dark horse that could be making a lot of moves is the Arizona Coyotes. Now moving up to number 18, also on a 5-game losing streak like the Arizona Coyotes, is the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues are on a 5-game losing streak, and we're starting to see them lose their ground in the West Division. They're 4-3-3 over their past 10 games. And the big struggle here for them, they are pretty terrible at home. 4-7-3. So they've won 4 of 14 games at home. That's unacceptable. But they're 10-3-2 on the road. So it's been a weird season for the Blues. They're still 14-10-5, only one game below 500. But they have to pick things up down the stretch because, like I said, despite LA losing ground, Arizona losing ground, St. Louis has not pounce on the opportunity to really get some separation between themselves and those other teams. As we've seen Colorado kind of move up the standings, it's gained some competition once again in the West. So let's take a look at number 17. On a 3-game losing streak, a lot of losing streaks here. We got the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks have fallen from grace once again. The Chicago Blackhawks are 3-6-1. over their past 10 games. The last 2 weeks have been miserable for the Chicago Blackhawks, and we definitely saw a correction. I thought last week was just a one-off week, and now 2 weeks in a row they have struggled, and they moved down a couple of spots, at least 5 spots this week. So it's been a bad week for the Blackhawks, really 2 weeks, and now the current 3-game losing streak does not help that for the Hawks. Honestly, this is still better than we thought they were, where they would have been, but now we're starting to see Nashville, Columbus start to creep their way back into the division, and now we're seeing Chicago's locked up playoff spot all of a sudden fall right in between their fingertips. A really, really tough spot for the Blackhawks. Now, up to number 16, moving up once again, with a couple losing streaks here from Chicago, St. Louis, and Arizona, we're seeing the Vancouver Canucks start to move ahead of those teams at number 16. The Vancouver Canucks right now are moving up the standings, 7-3-0 over their past 10 games. 3-game winning streak for the Vancouver Canucks as well. There is a lot of promise here for the Vancouver Canucks, who are all of a sudden making headwaves. Now, they're still bad on the road. They have to get better on the road. They're 6-9 on the road. That's not going to make the playoffs. They need to be better on the road. They need to find a way to beat teams like Montreal, Toronto. You got to beat those teams if you want a chance. It's good that you're beating teams like Edmonton now and again. You're beating Calgary and Ottawa, but you have to beat the big boys. And that's going to be critical here for the Vancouver Canucks if they want to make the postseason. Moving on up to number 15, we head out to the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens have been right in the middle of the pack, not really moving up or down over the past couple weeks. We saw that once again this week. They're 4-2-4 over their past 10 games. It's been an interesting road here for the Canadiens. They fired their head coach a couple weeks back, Claude Julien, and we haven't really seen them pick things up with Ducharme. And I think it's an interesting situation in Montreal. If they miss the playoffs, you could assume Marc Bergevin has to be in some trouble, but we'll see what happens. It's still early enough in the season where Montreal, if they can make the playoffs, that they could save face this season. And if they make the playoffs, that's really the end goal. As long as they're making the postseason, there is still hope for Bergevin. If they miss, you could kiss Bergevin likely goodbye this offseason. Moving up to number 14 is the Philadelphia Flyers. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde seasons here for the Flyers. They started out of the gate really strong, and then they really struggled for a couple weeks, and then they started getting better again. Then they got the beer bug right before Lake Tahoe, and since Lake Tahoe, they have struggled. And they capped that off with a loss to the New York Rangers, 9-0 without their coaching staff. And then they play the next night. The New York Islanders give up a 3-0 lead and find a way to win that one. Oscar Lindblom with a late goal. But at the end of the day, the Flyers, as a fan, it has to be difficult right now because it's either they're playing really well or they're playing terrible. And it just doesn't seem like there's any consistency or stability with the Flyers right now. Like I said, they're 4-6 over their past 10 games. Not good enough. They have to turn that around. Again, they're still up for grabs in the East Division in a playoff spot scenario, but they're starting to pick up their game. But again, I can't even say that because next week they could go on a 3-game losing streak and they find themselves with the New York Rangers toward the bottom of that division. All right, moving on up to lucky number 13. We are heading out to the Minnesota Wild in the West Division. Now, the Wild are 6-3-1 over their past 10 games. They're playing quite well. And their 10-3 home record has been huge for them in moving them up the standings. They obviously regressed a little bit last week, but they find themselves back in the top 15 this week. Another solid week for the Wild, and they are playing quite well. Kirill Kaprizov got his first hat trick this week. Cam Talbot has looked good in between the pipes, as well as Kaapo Kähkönen, showing the future in between the pipes for the Wild. Looks bright. Very good news for Minnesota once again. Moving on up to number 12, we head out to Pittsburgh, as the Pittsburgh Penguins are at number 12. 7-3 over their past 10 games. They did lose last night to New Jersey. The score looked closer than it really was. It was 3-1 most of the game, and they scored a late goal by Brian Rust in the final 3 seconds. But at the end of the day, they lost that game. A 2-game losing streak now for Pittsburgh. So there is a little bit of concern as we see teams like Boston and Philly start to pick things up. The Pittsburgh Penguins have not got that playoff spot locked up yet, and as those teams start to lockjaw onto the playoffs, you're going to see Pittsburgh, if they start to slide here, this could be the end of their season, and they become sellers at the deadline. At number 11, we have the Boston Bruins, who are 5-3-2 over their past 10. They're on a 2-game winning streak. The Boston Bruins have been interesting because their home record has been pretty solid, 7-3-1. They've been able to lock things down at home. They picked up 8 out of 11 games this season. They've picked up points in 8 of those 11 games. There we go. Had to fix that. So that's the good thing here for the Boston Bruins. But again, you got Philly coming up. And Pittsburgh still, if they want to play better, they can. The Boston Bruins, that playoff spot doesn't look so locked up because Washington and the Islanders seem to have the first 2 spots, and then the other 2 are up for grabs between Boston, Philly, and Pittsburgh. So now we move into the top 10. Now moving down once again this week is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now the Toronto Maple Leafs are currently 5-5 on the season. They're 5-5 over the last 10 games, and they're on a 2-game losing streak. Now it's not really that the Toronto Maple Leafs have been playing that bad necessarily. It's just other teams have leapfrogged them and are just playing flat out better. The record is still pretty good, 19-9-2, well above 500. But like I said, there is some genuine concern about this team because of their recent performances, and now that we're seeing some Freddie Anderson issues coming out, and there's some issues with this team. Like I said, don't be surprised if they start to become bigger in terms of the trade market. Kyle Dubas has made it quite clear he's willing to move prospects at this year's deadline, and maybe with the team's lackluster success over the past week or two, it's enough for the GM, Kyle Dubas, to pull the trigger on a big move. So now we move up to number 9, currently on a 5-game winning streak, is the Colorado Avalanche. That's why I'm wearing the Avs jersey today. Now, the Avs are at number 9 in our power rankings, won their last 5 in a row. They are 7-2-1 over their past 10 games. They've got 18 wins on the season. A pretty solid start here for the Avs. They've got 38 points on the season, and they find themselves toward the top of the West Division, only 3 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights. So, good news there for the Avalanche. They kind of regressed for like a week or two, but they started to pick things up over the past 2 weeks. So, good news for the Avalanche. Now, moving on up to number 8, and we are looking at some of the Canada teams here. At number 8 is the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Jets have had their issues. They had a tough loss last night against the Edmonton Oilers. That was a big loss for them, but they find a way to stay right in the mix here in the Canada North Division, whatever you want to call it, and they still find themselves with an 18-10-2 record. Like I said, 5-4-1 over their past 10. Not great, not terrible, but it's a better record than Toronto over the past 10, so that's good. They've made up a little bit of ground, but again, with Edmonton kind of turning the corner, this is not safe yet for them to win the division. It looked like Winnipeg was going to take that division, then Toronto came up, and now we're seeing Edmonton start to make things interesting. So a little bit of a shift of power there in the North Division. Speaking of that shift in the North Division, on a 2-game winning streak, is the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers are number 7. Now, the Edmonton Oilers are 6-4 over their past 10 games, and they're 9-5 on the road, which is very crucial for them. They've been able to pick up some of those wins in Toronto and find a way to win some games against Montreal, Vancouver. So Winnipeg is kind of feasting on the teams below them, but like I said, they are struggling against Toronto, and seemingly they find a way to beat Winnipeg this week, which is huge for them in the standings. And obviously winning the Battle of Alberta 6-1 in their final game against Calgary in that set. That was huge for the Oilers. At number 6 is the Florida Panthers. Now, the Florida Panthers had a rough loss last night against Nashville, but UC Saros stood on his head. But the Florida Panthers still find themselves second best in the NHL, or tied for second in the NHL standings, only 2 points back of the Tampa Bay Lightning for number 1. But they're still 6-2-2 over their past 10 games. Sergei Bobrovsky has looked pretty solid in between the pipes, so really no concerns there. Their away record is really good, 10-2-1 on the road, so I expect things to still be pretty good for the Florida Panthers. They're just in a little, again, you're going to lose games here and there, but they still find themselves at number 6 in the rankings, still a solid week. Number 5, we are looking at the New York Islanders, actually moving down a couple of spots as they're currently not looking their best. They're currently on a 2-game losing streak despite their 13-game point streak. They are 8-2 over their past 10. Their home record is unbelievable. Last night was actually their first regulation loss at home. They went 12-0-2 over their first 14 games. It took their 15th game at home to lose in regulation, which they lost to the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm not that concerned about the Islanders. The only thing is they did not play well in the first 40 minutes against Philly. They did play well in the third period, overcoming a 3-0 deficit. They tied the game in the third period. We saw Wallstrom get on the board. Sebastian Aho scores first goal with the Islanders this season. Michael Dalcol first of the season. But it was too little too late. Oscar Lindblom, with less than 3 minutes to go in regulation, got the goal. And just like that, the Islanders' 3-goal, the game that they pretty much tied, it was a first 0 point, quickly evaporates for the Islanders, and they lose in regulation for the first time at home this season. Tough loss for the Islanders. You knew that was going to be a rough game, especially against the Flyers after that 9-0 thumping they had the previous night against the Rangers at MSG. So not too bad for the Islanders. Number 4, we are taking a look at the Carolina Hurricanes, who themselves have started to slip just a little bit. They're on a 2-game losing skid like the Islanders. They're 8-1-1 over their past 10. And their road, they, like the Islanders, have a very good home record. 10-1-2 at home. Another solid week for the Hurricanes overall. But again, there is some concerns about how they ended this week. But they still find themselves in the top 5. At number 3, moving their way right back up, is the Vegas Golden Knights, the top of the West Division, the top of the Western Conference. They are currently on a 4-game winning streak. Very solid here for Vegas. And they find themselves with an 8-2 record over their past 10 games. So very solid here for the Vegas Golden Knights. They've quickly turned things around. There was a little bit of a hiccup like 2 weeks ago. And they've quickly recorrected that. Very good news for the Vegas Golden Knights. And now at number 2, moving up quite a significant amount this week, is the Washington Capitals. They are currently on a 6-game winning streak, one of those coming against the New York Islanders, breaking their point streak. The Washington Capitals are 9-1 over their past 10 games, and you look, again, another team that has been pretty solid at home, 9-3-2. The Washington Capitals have found a way to get things done, and they're finding ways to beat some of the good teams like the New York Islanders. Very critical time for the Washington Capitals if they want to lock down that top spot in the East. Maybe catch the Islanders off guard this week, continue to pick up some victories. They find themselves sitting pretty and comfortable at the top of the East Division. And that means at number 1 in this week's Power Rankings, once again, really this has been nothing short of what we expect, because the thing is, the Tampa Bay Lightning have been the best team in the NHL now for at least the past 3 seasons. They're 7-2-1 over their past 10 games. They've won their last 2 in a row. They're 21-6-2 on the season, 44 points, most in the NHL. The Tampa Bay Lightning have been by far the best team in the league, and that's just how it is. The teams have kept it close: the Panthers, the Caps, the Hurricanes, the Islanders, and even the Golden Knights. But at the end of the day, the Tampa Bay Lightning stay at number 1 in our power rankings. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of our power rankings for this week? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to help us hit 1,000 subscribers, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.